Welcome, Marvelites, to another all-new edition of the MCUExchange podcast. This is episode 4 of the MCUExchange podcast. And my name is Aaron. I'll be your host for this episode. And joining me today is Charles
What's up?
and Joe.
Hello, nice to be back.
Nice to be back indeed. And just want to give a shout out to our listeners over at Spotify, Podbean, and at YouTube. It's been a slow news week for the MCU, but we still have significant ones to break down. Let's dig in, shall we? First up is Loki, the Loki Disney Plus series. Tom Hiddleston, the actor who plays Loki, has been starting stunt preparation for the Loki Disney Plus series. And also, we've had huge news because the Disney Plus series is going to debut the MCU's first transgender character in the form of Sarah. And Charles, what do you think of the news that the MCU is going to introduce Sarah as the first transgender character?
Well, it's always great, right? Like, representation is never a bad thing. It's nice that people are finally getting their voices heard. People can finally see themselves more in each of these, superhero properties. But for me, the biggest takeaway is the fact they're fucking introducing or possibly introducing the 10th realm known as Heaven, which
Yeah.
90s comic fans know that these subset of characters, the angels, Angela, Sarah, Heaven. This used to be part of the Spawn comic, and halfway through the mid 2000s, there was like a thing where Neil Gaiman and Todd McFarlane like fought over the rights of these characters. Neil Gaiman obviously won, and he ended up selling the rights to Marvel for them to use these characters. So it's a very recent change in the Thor mythology that I'm surprised we're getting this early. Now I'm wondering whether the idea of possibly introducing another half sibling for Thor and Loki is a good idea. I wonder if that isn't overplayed because we got Hela as like the retcon third sibling. So I don't know. I think it's huge in the fact that the nine realms is gonna expand into the 10 realms now. I wonder if this is like a part of an alternate universe thing. Maybe the 10th realm only exists in one of the universe Loki jumps to, and not like the main one. Maybe he brings them to the main one. It's a very exciting prospect.
I think it also opens up the question on how exactly does introducing these kind of characters lead into the main storylines or into the movies, because we have Thor: Love and Thunder on the way. So, and we know that there was the talk about Valkyrie finding her queen. So this could technically also be the lead-in into that storyline to introduce Angela. So they tease the existence of Heaven and then have her appear in the upcoming film. Of course, the question is if that's a little too much. If you have Natalie Portman's Thor as well with Jane Foster, so it's really interesting because I didn't expect them to go that deep into Thor mythology with Loki. I thought they were just going to kind of do their own thing, but they really seem to be trying to get to those elements they couldn't really introduce in the film. And I also agree, it would be kind of weird to once again introduce, oh, by the way, you have another sister you didn't know about. But at the same time, we're talking about mythology here. I mean, Odin wasn't quite like Zeus, so he wasn't everywhere with everyone. But it's still kind of an interesting dramatic spin. Because the question is also, Thor exists in that universe. We're unsure how that universe split it off where this Loki version of Loki exists. So they could still also have Thor appear.
And the possibility of having other Avengers to pop up as well. Because, it will focus, as I've read somewhere, that it will focus on the 2012 Avengers timeline during that time. And what do you think, guys? Given that the Loki Disney Plus series is confirmed to have a connection with Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, as well as Thor: Love and Thunder, do you think it's an equal connection, or do you think that the Loki Disney Plus series will focus on just one movie, or just a throwaway to the other one? What do you think? How much of that connection will show up in this 6-episode run or 8-episode?
It's really tough.
Yeah.
It's because it's such a crazy like right now all these Disney Plus series, it's so hard to really nail down where they're going because all we really have are all these casting sheets and casting rumors and characters. So I'll be honest, I'm completely stumped. I have no idea how they're gonna do. Which is kind of exciting in a way. It's kind of exciting because I don't think we felt this way since back in the early days of the MCU.
I think that between Doctor Strange 2 and Loki 4, I think it's gonna lean more towards the Thor aspect of the
Mhm.
connection, because the character's so ingrained to Thor's arc, and Thor 4 will be the first film we'll see where, Thor is sort of is back in his own world, living in a world where Loki doesn't exist anymore. I
Mhm.
wonder what that's like for him. So I think it's gonna lean towards that. Whatever happens in the Loki show is gonna have some sort of ramification with the Thor film more than Doctor Strange. The Doctor Strange film is gonna be about the multiverse, and Loki is gonna travel in the multiverse. So I
Mhm.
guess I don't know. It could be anything. At this point, it's so
Yeah,
like Joe said, it's so exciting. It's so open, and anything can happen.
Yep.
because we also don't even know like how exactly is it going to work with the dimensional traveling that they're teasing, because he has the space stone, but there was never talk about interdimensional travel. He travels through time, but there was no mention of the time stone. But at the
Yeah.
same time, we have the rumors that Doctor Strange will reintroduce the time stone. So for some reason, the Infinity Stones that were supposedly destroyed by Thanos are once again playing a key role. So it's really hard to say what's going to happen with this.
Unless
Yeah.
maybe Loki finds a way to steal like some pim particles and he figures out, oh shit, this is what's happening in the future. They're time traveling, not even using the time stone. They have their own sort of device. Maybe he uses that. Maybe he figures out a way. Yeah, the time travel stuff is definitely the biggest question for me in this show.
It's intriguing, and I don't know if Loki can find a way to unlock maybe the Tesseract's potential or something like that. Maybe we're gonna find out. Yeah, definitely going to find out. And of course, with the announcement of the transgender character debuting in the MCU, the representation and diversity drive of the MCU is already in full swing, and it's going to be important for them down the line to introduce many characters like Sarah. And now the next news coming up is Paul Bettany teases a One Division teaser soon and an upcoming first look. And what do you think? When will be this upcoming first look? Is it going to be on Super Bowl Sunday this Sunday, or is it going to be after that when other trailers have been premiered and going to surprise us after and then you know, show us this new trailer? Joe, what do you think?
I don't think they're going to show it at Super Bowl. If they're going to show something at Super Bowl, I think the right thing would be Falcon the Winter Soldier, because that's the first releasing show. But at the same time, we like the thing is his tease sounds like we're getting some kind of like look and feel of what we can expect from this series. But we already had like some small reveals of like artwork or directions and teases through images. I think it's going to be a very small teaser that may be released to kind of push Disney Plus alongside a teaser for Falcon the Winter Soldier. I'd be really surprised if they do the Super Bowl, because it is, I mean, the Super Bowl is expensive. Any advertisement there is really expensive, and they're starting to move away from movie trailers at the Super Bowl. That's kind of changing over the last few years. Plus, it's kind of hard. Like this sounds weird, but I don't think that's the right audience for this kind of weird bonkers show that Paul Bettany is
Uh,
promising. I think that would just confuse people more. I could see this them going a complete. I would love for them to just like the show go into a really crazy advertising direction. I mean, I work in the industry, and it's so much fun you can do with this because you already have such an out there concept. Just have fun with the advertising. Just not just show a classic teaser, but like have some fun with it.
Yeah, I think for the Super Bowl, we're definitely getting some Black Widow stuff, not One Division stuff, unfortunately. But
Mhm.
and I agree with Joe that it's not the right audience, like a bunch of sports fans. I don't think they're gonna jump at the idea of like a sitcom with a 50s sitcom with Paul Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen. With regards to when it could show up, the what do you call this, the WandaVision stuff? Shit, I don't know. It's different because I was gonna say CinemaCon, then I realized it's not a movie because
yeah,
CinemaCon is like in a few months. So shit, I don't know. I don't know when
Comic
could
Con,
this show
maybe.
be. I guess Comic Con it could be, but it's still like wait, like we're like 6 months away from it or 7 months away from it. So it's too
Mhm.
far. He said it was happening soon. It could be honestly, it could be any time between next Monday and July.
Oh,
Like when
Yeah.
Disney Plus drops like a new what to expect this year sort of tease. But the idea that it's coming soon at least excites me, and the insanity stuff it gets me super hyped.
yeah. Just want to pick your thoughts on this, guys. We know that it is half sitcom, half full-blown trailer, full-blown action piece. What do you think is the treatment for the trailer? Is it going? Are they going to show that sitcom treatment, or are they going to do or going to combine both into a sitcom and a movie? What do you think is a treatment for the upcoming teaser for One Division?
Oh, I hope they get creative with it, like Joe said, and they should fucking treat it like a fucking Big Bang Theory trailer.
Oh, that would be so good.
Oh my god,
Something
that would break the
like
internet.
something super cheap, something super cheesy, something super on the nose. They should go crazy with that and just totally embrace the insanity that is a 50 sitcom.
The fun thing is they can take from so many different types of like shows, Seventh Heaven, Friends, or any kind of sitcom that has existed forever, and just roll with it. Just have like the cheesy slogans, them looking at the camera and smiling as their names are introduced, or just the random laughing at the end because something was really funny but we don't know what. And I would love a trailer that's just a sitcom introduction that gets more and more creepy as it goes on. Something like I don't know if you guys watched Adult Swim's Too Many Cooks. It was pretty much a sitcom introduction, but it just kept repeating and going weirder and weirder with each time it repeated.
Oh man.
Like all of a sudden a sock puppet character showed up or something was on flames in the background. I think you can do something very similar here.
Imagine if they do a teaser trailer where like they have a theme song and then just gonna show it there, like Wanda and Vision dancing to it. It's gonna be weird. Imagine all the possibilities, guys. And now we move on to the next news. Next news is a new stars joining Falcon and the Winter Soldier in the form of Noah Mills, who also stars in The Brave, and he's going to be up there in an undisclosed role. Charles, what do you think his role would be? Is he going to be on the side of the bad guys, or is he going to be on the side of the good guys?
I think he's gonna be part of the bad guys. I've heard some rumblings about him sort of being part of one of the henchmen, something like that. It could be anyone. Like we were talking about early before the show. It would be great if like sort of a remnants of Crossbones terrorist group shows up and he's part of it, and we get to see like the biological chemical attack that we saw in the first act of Civil War. It would be great
Yep.
if they bring that back with this guy Noah Mills part of that crew. Yeah, as far as my guess goes, I think he's a villain.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's probably a villain. If it's a bigger cat, I just think he's probably a henchman or something like that, or a bigger henchman. I really love the theory of a Crossbones Remnants because first of all, it ties in perfectly into a story where where Captain America elements come back. At the same time, we know that Sam Wilson was part of this mission, and the thing is, for me, is I still think it's a waste that I think Crossbones was such an interesting character that while his death was meaningful, I think they could have done so much more with him. And it makes sense to kind of bring back that costume, that character in a legacy form for let's say Thunderbolts because right now it feels like a lot of elements that they could do with Thunderbolts is a tribute to how they originally started off with the Avengers. So, like, if they have Taskmaster being introduced to the Thunderbolts initiative or something, you could play around with it as the first member. You could bring back Crossbones as a legacy character, kind of like Ant-Man took over the mantle. So they can play around with a lot, and I think that would be a lot of potential.
And I love the idea of having legacy characters for villains, and that treatment would work for Thunderbolts, and exciting. It will be exciting down the line. And we're moving on to the next news. The fourth news for this episode is we have several Doctor Strange in the Multiverse casting news, uh, and it points to the debut of two big characters in a Doctor Strange mythology. We're going to see Clea and Brother Voodoo finally in live action in the big screen. Joe, what do you think? How big are the roles going to be in Doctor Strange sequel?
What I can imagine is that maybe they're trying to, because it's what is left of this magical order pretty much. It's just Doctor Strange and Wong. I think they're going to try to bring back people to kind of build it up again before all the multiverse shenanigans start in the end. I don't think they're going to have a lot. I think Clea will have a considerable role. The question, of course, is also if the love interest from the first movie returns, which was rumored early on. If that, I mean, I don't hope. I hope they don't go for a love triangle in a Doctor Strange film, but or if they say, okay, Clea is just an additional character or a challenge, a foil. I think Clea is really interesting because her backstory just lends itself to a lot of interesting story elements. And Brother Voodoo, I think, it was kind of set up with his brother being in the first film.
So many fans didn't notice that his brother is in the first film. He was the guardian of the New York Sanctum. He was killed by Caecilius. Charles, what are your thoughts on this casting rumors?
Joe brings up an interesting point about Clea and the fact that the idea that it's not a good idea to have like a fucking another love interest here. Like we still have Rachel McAdams in this story, so
Mm-hmm.
with Clea being such an important part of the strange mythology and the Rachel McAdams sort of just being like nobody. I wonder if they're gonna like just push the character aside because she never was a significant character to begin with in terms of like the big picture of the multiverse stuff. Like, who gives a fuck about Christine Palmer when you got Clea, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
As for the Brother Voodoo stuff, yeah, it's great because at one point in the comics, Brother Voodoo became the Sorcerer Supreme. So the fact that they're bringing him here means that that could happen. That could be like a strange, the third Doctor Strange movie. Doctor Strange loses the
Mm.
the Sorcerer Supreme, and then it goes to Brother Voodoo. I'd like to see something like that, like a shake up big like that. But yeah, it's like it's so hard to see how it's all gonna fit. Like I know
Yeah.
we have a big talking point later in this episode
Yes.
about having many characters, but it's interesting because we heard about America Chavez and now these two. I'm wondering how it's all gonna work out.
Yeah. And given Clea's connection to Dormammu, do you think that Dormammu will eventually return in this movie or somewhere down the line? Given that the time stone is technically not there anymore, so do you
Yeah,
think
for
he might
sure.
appear?
I think he's gonna be back. I think the fact that there's no more time stone, Doctor Strange doesn't have any way of like sort of making a bargain with him, striking a bargain with Dormammu. I think he's gonna be back. I think he'll be
Mm.
pissed. The fact that the multiverse is being tampered with, like imagine how many Dormammus exist out there. Assuming
Oh yeah.
each multiverse holds a specific kind of Dormammu, or maybe he's sort of like an abstract sort of figure where there's only one Dormammu in like 100 multiverses. Could be something like that. But yeah, I think we're definitely gonna get at least an image minimum, like a shot of Dormammu
Yeah.
minimum in the movie.
I mean, I have a theory that Doctor Strange will try to keep the illusion alive that he still has the time stone.
Mm.
So I
Ooh.
can see him like putting something in the eye of Agamotto, which just lights up green. So if Dormammu gets any weird ideas, that he can kind of still threaten him and be like, "Well, you don't want to make me use this again." And let's look at it this way: Clea is a daughter of Dormammu. Dormammu doesn't have a physical form, and what I think they could do, because I think Rachel McAdams is an incredible actress, so it'd be kind of a waste for her just relegated to this love interest side, is maybe Clea herself is a character that has no physical form
Uh-huh.
and kind of takes over Christian Palmer's body.
Oh,
So
Interesting.
you
wow.
can play around with
That would work.
yeah, because you have a great actress. You can play around with the fact that there's two people in there. You can technically kind of twist the love interest, love triangle aspect, still combine them. And I think you can cover a lot of ground with it because it makes sense in universe if you look at if you're trying to sell someone, okay, this big glowing head created a person.
it's one of like the best ideas I've heard about this movie. Like it streamlines a lot of stuff. Like
Mm,
of course it makes sense for Dormammu for him to get near to Doctor Strange. He needs to tap into Doctor Strange's vulnerabilities. What better way than to use Christine Palmer? What better way than like to create an entity that Dormammu himself could control? Maybe he creates Clea, and then he puts Clea inside of Christine Palmer, Rachel McAdams, and then everyone wins. Rachel McAdams gets to do some meaty stuff while you
yeah.
you, you introduce Clea. You're sort of faithful to the idea that Clea is Dormammu's daughter or creation, and then Dormammu's back. Yeah, I fucking love it.
Yeah, and it eradicates the idea of having a love triangle in a Doctor Strange movie. All right. Well, so many threats in the multiverse. Strange can use all the allies he can get. And now let's moving on to the last news in the rundown. And just recently, just earlier actually, that we received news that the MI6 characters are going to debut as well in Shang-Chi. For me, who doesn't know anything yet about the MI6 and the Shang-Chi mythology, Charles, can you run us through about this casting news?
Yeah, so I think it's pretty big that we're getting finally. We talked about this before the show. Finally, a perspective from the government that's not part of the United States. We're finally gonna see this intelligence apparatus is finally folded into like the main fucking superhero world of the MCU. Like Shang-Chi, for the most part, if I'm not mistaken, has some very, very, very deep ties to MI6.
Mm.
He was an undercover agent at one point. He was sort of like their Asian James Bond, basically. And the fact that we're getting sort of a crew of MI6 agents is very, very exciting for me. I mean, I don't know the specific these specific characters like Jack Tar or something like that, and Leiko something like that. Um, I don't know them specifically, but just the fact that we're getting MI6 characters from the Marvel universe makes me super excited.
They mentioned it's Leiko Wu, Clive Reston, and Black Jack Tar. And shout out to Murphy's Multiverse for breaking it down earlier. And Joe, what do you think about the debut of this character, especially what Charles said that it gives a fresh perspective to the MCU.
Oh, I definitely agree because I think the CIA was kind of hinted at but never really utilized. And most of the superhero films, like I think Spider-Man was the only one where we really explored Europe as such, but we never explored how Europe reacts to superheroes in a way because it always was very focused on Shield. And the fun thing is that the MI6 has in real world has a lot of history. It has a lot of history in media if you look at James Bond and at Marvel as well. And like personally, I think it would be great even if Black Widow is kind of a spy movie or a spy I think it's closer to like a Mission Impossible film,
Hmm.
but thinking we could get like a James Bond spy film in the Marvel universe with like a character like Union Jack, I think would be really interesting. And also speaking of like diversity, it's also good to get some more non-American characters into this franchise because I know like I live in Europe and right everyone here is kind of just talking about well every superhero is an American, and I think it's an interesting discussion to hold. Like, what's the potential to also explore the superhero realms of Europe? I remember there being rumors that they're making a Captain Britain movie, and so I think they're trying to open the floodgates to also explore how the international heroes or how the rise of heroes in the states may have influenced other nations.
One thing to note is from Charles Murphy said in his article that the film were apparently introduced the idea that Shang-Chi worked for MI6 at one time, but has since made his departure from the role. And that's interesting to know
Oh
that
wow,
an Asian, supposed Asian hero is working for them at one time and then, they closed off. Maybe something happened. That's why he closed off from them. And then he's now trying to ask them for help, maybe, or
yeah,
trying to return to the fold.
that's very exciting. I love the
Mm.
idea that when we meet Shang-Chi, he will have this history with the MI6. He's not just some chump who knows martial arts. Like he's a dude who's been working in the field, who's worked in the field, who's fucking fought bad guys and Now he's gonna fucking fight the Mandarin. I love that idea.
And that has been the rundown for the latest news of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the past week. And now we move on to the most exciting segment of our podcast. It's the exchange, where we dissect and talk about latest rumors. But now this is not about the rumors. We're going to talk about something interesting. Well, we've seen several movies in the past and also upcoming movies that there's the risk of having too much characters in the MCU properties. Well, one notable is Captain America Civil War back then, and that was handled well. And now we're seeing it all over again for the Doctor Strange the Multiverse of Madness film, Thor Love and Thunder, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, as well as WandaVision. So guys, when is it too much? Is it a yay or a nay of having that risk of many characters in the films, so trying for the audiences trying to keep up? I'm gonna start with you, Charles. What do you think? Is it a yay or a nay for this one?
It's hard because when we hear news like this, like they're getting Miss America, Brother Voodoo, Clea, and who else? Whoever the fuck else. We are running off the assumption that these characters are gonna be main characters. Like we have no basis on how big the roles are
Mm.
gonna be. The default go to is, oh shit, they're fucking adding another main character to this fucking big movie. But
Mm-hmm.
when the reality is, these characters their lines could range from 1 to 5. It's like Brother Voodoo. They may be casting Brother Voodoo now, but in the movie he could have like fucking 8 lines, and then that's it. It's a very interesting idea of how we perceive casting reports. We react prematurely, understandably though, because it's we don't want another Spider-Man 3 where there's like 3 villains and then none of them get their due. So you end up
Mm.
with a film it falls flat. And Captain America Civil War has proved that you can have all these characters and then you could have a very fulfilling arc. You can have you can have like that. You could say the same thing for Endgame where you had like a million characters, but
Mm-hmm.
everyone got their due, everyone got their moment. So I think that we shouldn't get worried. So I'd say yay that we're getting new characters, but at the same time, it's a balancing act. Obviously, you can
Mm.
always fall to one side and fail to focus on the other. So could be anything, but the MCU has proved that they can do it.
Joe, yay or nay? Too many characters for the MCU films.
In my opinion, the thing is with a lot of characters, I think the MCU has proven that they're very capable of doing it, and they've always been good at kind of having a balancing act between the characters. Of course, it was a learning curve. Iron Man 2 was the first time we were introduced to a lot of side characters that would become bigger roles later on. But it's really difficult because on the one side you want more characters because we're moving into this completely new era, so we're going to kind of see a lot of new characters that need to be introduced through characters we know to kind of ease in the fact that yeah, there's no more Iron Man, there's no more Steve Rogers, we have a new Captain America, we have new characters taking over. I like Doctor like the only movie I'm really a little worried about is Doctor Strange because first of all, of course, there's an unease with the director leaving, who was very passionate about the character,
Yeah.
where you're like, okay, and they're having to introduce these Disney Plus series and bringing those into the fold. Like with a D Plus series, it's a little easier to say we have a lot of characters because you have more episodes, so you have more time to develop each character than you would in a film. But in a film, it then comes the challenge: what's the focus? How many characters could you bring in? Um, what potential is there to really explore these characters? And it's a really interesting balancing act, just like Charles said, that I think Marvel can handle without a problem.
Yep.
But I do think I think it would not be a bad idea to also have some films that just kind of keep it close to heart. Like I think Shang-Chi is trying to be. Like that movie has MI6, but it's not really focusing on the universe at large, but more on this smaller group.
Okay.
I mean, you bring up an interesting point with Derrickson leaving because the more I think about it, I'm pretty sure Derrickson left because Kevin Feige wanted Doctor Strange to be very connected to a lot of things. You gotta introduce this character. You gotta tie into this. You gotta do this. You gotta do that. It is
Yeah.
alarming worry that they lost a director over the possibility of having just too many characters. Maybe Derrickson felt that we have fucking too many characters. We're gonna do the multiverse. We're gonna have Nightmare. We can't have America Chavez show up, and then you guys want me to set up Brother Voodoo and Clay and do all these things. It does it's cause for worry, but it's Kevin Feige we trust, as we always say.
Yeah, maybe it became too much for him, too much for him to handle. You know, reading
Yeah,
the
it could be
script,
that. Yeah,
reading the script. Oh no, how do I gonna have the treatment for this? It's not like I'm gonna just show this up or on a screen or something.
No.
Yeah, I'm thinking of having that discussion with them of Derrickson and Feige discussing it back and forth. There's usual back and forth during this production.
Yeah, as much as we know, like even the characters introduced from Disney Plus, like we know Scarlet Witch is the only one that's really been confirmed. It could just as well be that he shows up in her universe, which is the ending of this show, and just kind of helps her out, gets her out. She helps him with one thing, and then she doesn't show up again. Like it's a funny discussion because we have like Avengers Endgame where we had a million of characters, and now we're worried about one movie not being able to handle it. And I think and I agree with Charles with you. It's just that I think Derrickson wanted a much more smaller casted film, focusing more on the Doctor Strange lore,
hmm
and they just wanted to do more because you have that potential with this multiverse storyline that just felt a little too. It's the best place to kind of connect a lot of different elements.
They love taking risk. They've taken it already. They've showed it with Infinity War and Civil War, Infinity War and Endgame, and they told themselves it worked. And now after Endgame, anything will work for these guys because they're and the casual audience and even the hardcore fans wants more, wants more of this. They are craving for more characters. They're craving for more
yeah,
storylines after Avengers Endgame because they've proven that they can take care of this. They know how to treat this. They
Mm-hmm.
what's good about Marvel Studios when I'm watching the films over then, um, they're really good at informing casual audiences about certain characters that they're not familiar with. Like they're gonna
mm,
spoon feed it to you. With regards to Black Panther and Civil War, and if you ask me then, if having too much characters in the MCU is uh, is would cause panic, I would say nay. Then before the first Avengers film, but after the first Avengers film, so on, it looks good. I mean, it's a yay now because um, also there's that fear of certain characters being underutilized. Yes, there's going to be that fear, but even if it's a cameo in this movie, you know that they're going to have a big role down the line because this is a connected
Mm-hmm.
universe. This is a big universe. This is a cinematic universe, and that's a strong point of Marvel Studios. That hey, we are connected. Even if this guy has a small role in this film, watch out the next film. He will be one of the main characters. Even if he's the supporting one in this film, maybe in the next film, if you just watch closely in this film, he will be one of that major players down the line, right? So
Mm.
basically, it's a yay for me.
I'll put a yay on it. A cautious yay, I'll say.
Okay.
Because on one side, it's really exciting to see all these characters being introduced. Because there's a lot of characters I'm not really that well versed with, like Miss Marvel or She-Hulk, because I just didn't grow up with these characters, and it's a great way to be introduced to them, and also kind of ease your way in that they can use these Disney Plus shows to kind of really connect and introduce characters that normally you wouldn't expect on the big screen. But at the same time, I kind of can also just imagine them having fun with it. Because like I would love to see a segment in Doctor Strange too, where everything suddenly he's in an animated world and he's in the What If series. I don't know,
Oh,
trying to run away from a zombie Iron Man or something. So they can do so much with it at this point because they introduced so many characters already that there's a lot to explore. But what I hope is that they don't lose track of the characters that they started with as well.
so that's a total of three A's. And that has been the exchange, and that has been the episode 4 of the MC Exchange podcast. And just want to say a shout out again to our listeners over at Spotify, YouTube, and Podbean. Thank you for staying for this long. And I just want to promote our MC Exchange social media accounts for those of you who want to read and listen to our offerings. You can follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/MCUExchange. You can also follow us on Facebook. That's facebook.com/MCUExchange for all the latest news and rumors that we break down. And you can also listen and watch our videos over at YouTube. That's MCU Exchange. And you can also follow me on Twitter. That's Aaron Chino. Charles, your Twitter.
You can find me on Twitter at CFS Villanueva.
And also Joe.
You'll find me at that Abel, THATABERL.
Yep. And we usually post that when I repost the episode. I'm gonna tag you guys, and then you can also follow us there. And this has been the MC Exchange Podcast, episode 4. Thank you for listening. Till then.
Till next time.
Bye.